Okay, today we're going to be talking about right triangles again, but I'm going to give you a little trick. So instead of always using the Pythagorean theorem to find the lengths of the sides, I'm going to give you a little shortcut when we have special right triangles. So the two special right triangles that we're going to be talking about are 45, 45, 90 and 30, 60, 90. So that refers to the degrees in each angle. So for example, this triangle down here has 45, 45, and 90 degrees. And then on the next page, we're going to be talking about triangles with 30, 60, and 90 degrees in each of their angles. So one thing you have to know for this lesson is when I'm talking about a right triangle, if this is the right angle, these two sides that are touching the right angle are called legs. Oops, that's not how you spell leg. The side that is not touching, or it's opposite of the 90-degree angle, that is called the hypotenuse. So we have to be able to remember those things in order to effectively learn this lesson. So in a 45, 45, 90-degree triangle, the two legs are both going to be the same. The hypotenuse is going to be whatever the leg is times the square root of 2. So that's what this little equation says right here. Hypotenuse equals whatever the leg is times the square root of 2. So for example 1, if we were trying to find the value of x, so this side is a leg because it's touching the 90-degree angle. This side is a leg, it's touching the 90-degree angle. This side over here, where x is the hypotenuse because it's opposite of the 90-degree angle. So to find the hypotenuse, I multiply one of the legs times the square root of 2. So x will equal 8 times the square root of 2. So that's all we got to do for that one. For this example over here, so again, this is a leg. Get rid of that arrow. This is a leg. This is a hypotenuse. So again, the two in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the two legs are always the same. So that means x would equal 9. And then this last triangle, so this little symbol, remember, that means these two sides are congruent. So that's how we know it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. If these two sides are the same, and this is 90, these have to be 45 degrees. So this is a leg, this is a leg, and this is the hypotenuse. So again, the two legs have to be the same, so this side would be 18. And notice that they get the hypotenuse by multiplying the leg times square root of 2, so 18 square root of 2. In example 2, we got to solve for the missing variables. So this one is a little trickier because we don't know what either of the legs are, but we can tell they're both the same, so these have to be congruent, so these are 45 degrees, since these are both the same number. So like we said before, if we know the leg, we can multiply it by square root of 2 to get the hypotenuse. But if I know the hypotenuse, so I'll say the hypotenuse is equal to leg times square root of 2. But this time we know the hypotenuse, and we're trying to figure out the leg. So if I want to solve for leg in this case, I could divide by square root of 2. So if I divide the hypotenuse by the square root of 2, that will equal the leg. So remember, we cannot leave a square root on the bottom, so to get rid of that square root, I have to multiply the bottom times itself. But I also have to multiply the top by itself, because I want this number to be 1. So I'll have 8 root 2 on the top. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2. If you're not sure how to do that, square root of 2 times 2. Got a pair of 2's, one goes away, the other one comes out. So now I have 8 root 2 divided by 2. So I look to see if the whole numbers have any numbers in common, any common factors. 2 goes into both of them. So how many times does 2 go into 8? 4 times. 2 goes into 2 once, so I'll have 4 over 1, or just 4 root 2. So a little trick. Whenever you know, in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, whenever you know the hypotenuse, if you divide this number by 2, and multiply it times the square root of 2, that'll be the leg. And then part B, we got to find this length over here, so I'll just call that x. So if the leg, so again, this is a leg, hypotenuse. So if the leg is 3 root 2 and I'm trying to find the hypotenuse, we just multiply the leg times square root of 2. So I took the leg, multiplied it times square root of 2. But now I have 3 root 2 times root 2. So another way to write square root of 2 times square root of 2 is square root of 2 times 2. So I got a pair of 2's, one goes away, the other one comes out. There's nothing left inside of the square root. So that means I'm not going to write the square root sign anymore. So 3 times 2 is what I'm left with, so x is going to equal 6. So moving on to the next page. So on this page we're going to be talking about 30, 60, 90 triangles. So these rules are a little bit different. So the hypotenuse is equal to the short leg, so this would be the short leg. This is the long leg. So as long as you know which sides of the legs, it's not too difficult to see which one's the short one, which one's the long one. Hypotenuse is still on the opposite side of the 90-degree angle. So to figure out the hypotenuse, we multiply the short leg by 2. To figure out the long leg, we multiply the short leg times the square root of 3. So these are rules you're just going to have to remember. Hopefully with enough practice you'll remember them. So this is the short leg. So these are the two legs because they're touching the 90-degree angle. This is the long leg. And then of course this is the hypotenuse. Oops. So if the short leg is 6, I know the hypotenuse. So hypotenuse is y. Hypotenuse has to be 12 because 6 times 2 is 12. The long leg, I just multiply the short leg times square root of 3, so 6 root 3. So that's all you would do for that one. So if you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle and they give you the short leg, the other two lengths are pretty easy to find. So on the next example, this is the short leg, and hopefully this is super obvious. I'm just writing it just in case. And that's the hypotenuse. So if we knew the short leg, we'd multiply it times 2 to get the hypotenuse. But in this case, we know the hypotenuse is 8. So what could we multiply by 2 to get 8? Or what's 8 divided by 2? So x would have to be 4. The short side has to be 4 because 4 times 2 is 8. Then the long leg is the short side times square root of 3. So 4 root 3. And then moving down, so it gets a little trickier here at the end. So this time we know the short leg, this is the long, this is the hypotenuse. So if we know the short leg, it's pretty easy to find the hypotenuse in the long leg. So x is the long leg, y is the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse, all I got to do is multiply this times 2. So if I multiply square root of 3 times 2, I get 2 root 3. To find the long leg, I multiply the short leg times square root of 3. So square root of 3 times square root of 3. But another way to write that is square root of 3 times 3. So I got a pair of 3's. One goes away, the other one comes out. There's nothing left inside of the square root. So this just equals 3. So the long leg is going to be 3. So it's a little tricky because it looks kind of backwards almost. But that would be your answer. And then for the last one, try to find x and y. So they give us, this is the long leg, short leg, hypotenuse. So that's not something that you have to write down when you're doing these every time, but it can be helpful, especially at first, so I would recommend doing so. And once it becomes super obvious, then you don't have to do it anymore. So this one is tough because it's a little bit it's different than any of the other ones because we don't know what the short leg is and we don't know the hypotenuse. So in order to figure out what the short leg is, because once I know the short leg, I can just multiply that times 2 to get the hypotenuse. So if I was trying to find the long leg, it equals the short leg times the square root of 3. But I'm not trying to find the long leg, I already know what it is. I'm trying to find the short leg. So if I solved for short leg, I could divide both sides by square root of 3. So that means the short leg is going to equal the long divided by square root of 3. So if the long leg is 9, I'm going to divide that by the square root of 3. I cannot leave a square root on the bottom, so I got to get rid of that square root. So I'm going to multiply the bottom by whatever the square root is. I'm going to multiply the top by the same thing because I need this to be 1, because if I multiply this by 1, it doesn't change the value. So 9 root 3 will be on the top. On the bottom, when I have square root of 3 times square root of 3, that just equals 3. So then I just look to see if these two numbers have any common factors. So 9 and 3, do they have any common factors? Well, 3 goes into both of them. How many times does 3 go into 9? 3 times. 3 goes into 3 once. So the bottom just basically goes away. So 3 root 3 will be the short side. So 3 root 3. And to figure out the hypotenuse, I just multiply this times 2. So 3 times 2 is 6 root 3. So again, when I multiply this thing by a whole number, I only multiply the whole numbers by whole numbers. And I only multiply the square roots by other square roots. So that would be your answer.